my dear brothers and sisters, today I want to speak to you about something that carries tremendous power, something that shapes destinies, opens closed doors, and builds character that cannot be shaken by storms. The power of patience. Patience is not weakness. It is not passivity. It is a mighty spiritual force that aligns your heart with the timing of God. When you understand the power of patience, you will stop fighting the process and start trusting the purpose. You will stop asking when and start saying, Lord, I trust you. Many people today want instant results, instant blessings, instant breakthroughs. We live in an age of speed, fast food, fast money, fast fame. But God does not work according to the pace of man. He works according to His divine timing. If you try to rush His plan, you will miss His perfection. There are blessings that cannot come to immature hearts. There are promises that require preparation. Patience is what shapes you for the promise. It's what makes you ready for the miracle you are praying for. Without patience, you may hold the seed, but never see the harvest. When you plant a seed in the ground, you don't dig it up every morning to check if it's growing. You trust the process. You water it, nurture it, and wait. That is faith in action. Faith and patience work together. Faith believes God will do it. Patience waits until He does. Faith declares, it is done. Patience stands firm and says, it will manifest in His time. Many people have faith, but few have patience. And that is why many start strong but end weak. They believe but grow weary in waiting. Yet, those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. Patience is not about sitting still, it is about standing strong while you wait for God to move. Sometimes God delays not to deny you, but to develop you. The waiting season is a training season. When you are waiting for healing, for provision, for a breakthrough, God is shaping your heart. He is stretching your faith. He is building endurance in your spirit. Do not despise the waiting period. The longer the preparation, the greater the manifestation. The deeper the roots, the higher the tree will rise. God may not answer when you want, but He will always answer when you are ready. There are people who give up just before the miracle. They stop praying. They stop believing. They stop hoping. But if they had held on just a little longer, they would have seen the glory of God. Patience separates those who quit from those who conquer. It is the bridge between promise and fulfillment. Think of Abraham. He waited years for his promised son. Think of Joseph. He waited through betrayal and prison before stepping into the palace. Think of David, anointed as king, but hunted like a criminal for years before sitting on the throne. Each of them was shaped by patience. Without it, their faith would have been incomplete. When storms come, patience will anchor your soul. When prayers seem unanswered, patience will whisper, God is still working. When people misunderstand you, patience will keep you from reacting in anger. When doors seem closed, patience will remind you that God is preparing a better one. Every delay has a divine design. Every waiting period has a purpose. You may not see it now, but one day you will look back and thank God for the times He made you wait, because in that waiting, He was molding your heart, refining your motives, and positioning you for His perfect will. Patience is power under control. It is strength wrapped in silence. It is confidence that God's clock is never late. Those who learn patience walk with peace. They do not panic when things go wrong. They do not compare their journey with others. They know that God's timing for their life is unique. The moment you stop rushing and start resting in God's plan, you will find supernatural calm in your spirit. You will begin to live above frustration, above worry, above fear. So, my friends, let patience have its perfect work in you. Do not run ahead of God. Do not complain in the waiting. Keep trusting, keep believing, keep praising. The same God who promised will fulfill it. And when He does, you will realize that every second of waiting was worth it, because patience did not delay your blessing. It prepared you to receive it fully, with faith, with gratitude, and with joy. Patience is not weakness, but a divine strength that aligns us with God's perfect timing. When people hear the word patience, they often think of it as passivity or as a sign of surrender when things are not going their way. But patience in the spiritual sense is not a lack of action. It is the highest form of trust in divine order. It is the ability to stay calm, steady, and faithful even when everything around you seems delayed or silent. True patience is not just waiting, it is waiting with the right attitude. It is a quiet confidence that what God has spoken will come to pass, even when there is no visible evidence of change. It is strength under control, the strength to remain peaceful when your emotions want to panic, the strength to stay hopeful when circumstances look hopeless, and the strength to stay kind when others test your limits. In a world that values speed, patience is becoming rare. Everyone wants immediate results, instant answers, and quick success. But God's ways are not our ways. He is never in a hurry, yet He is never late. His timing is perfect because it aligns with His purpose, and His purpose is always for our good. Sometimes, when things seem delayed, it is because God is protecting us from something we cannot yet see, or preparing us for something we are not yet ready to handle. The waiting period is not punishment, it is preparation. The strength of patience is the ability to recognize that God is still working, even in silence. It is the faith that believes that every second of waiting is shaping your character, refining your motives, and deepening your dependence on Him. Patience teaches humility because it reminds us that we are not in control. It reminds us that our lives are guided by a higher hand. It strips us of pride and self-dependence and teaches us to surrender to God's wisdom. When you practice patience, you are declaring that you trust His plan more than your own. You are saying, Lord, I may not understand your timing, but I trust that it is perfect. This kind of surrender releases peace into your heart. Instead of struggling against the process, you begin to flow with it. You stop trying to force doors open and start trusting that the right doors will open at the right time. Patience also protects you from making wrong decisions. Many people lose blessings because they act out of impatience. They rush into relationships, jobs, or choices that seem right in the moment but end in regret. Impatience blinds the heart, but patience gives clarity. When you are patient, you make decisions from peace, not pressure. You allow time for truth to unfold, and you avoid the traps that come with haste. God's promises always come to those who are willing to wait in faith. The moment you try to take control, you step out of alignment with His timing, and the peace of God begins to fade. The power of patience is not only in waiting, but in what happens within you while you wait. It builds spiritual maturity. It strengthens your faith, it teaches endurance, and shapes compassion for others. It transforms your perspective from, "Why is this happening?" to, "What is God teaching me through this?" You begin to see that patience is not about the delay itself, but about the development happening in your soul. It is how God prepares you to handle the blessings He has already planned. When patience becomes part of your character, you stop being moved by circumstances and start being led by faith. You learn that real power is not in forcing outcomes, but in trusting God's perfect timing and resting in His unchanging promises. Patience is power under control and peace in the midst of uncertainty. It is the quiet strength that does not crumble when life feels unpredictable, the calm spirit that refuses to be shaken, even when everything seems delayed or uncertain. Patience is not the absence of emotion or the denial of pain, it is the mastery of them. It is choosing to remain steady when others are losing their balance, to stay kind when frustration tries to harden your heart, and to stay hopeful when answers are slow in coming. True patience is not passive waiting but active faith, the kind of faith that keeps trusting even when there is no visible sign of progress. It is standing in peace while chaos swirls around you, knowing deep within that God is still in control of every detail. When you possess patience, you carry power that does not need to prove itself. It is quiet but unbreakable. It gives you authority over your emotions, your fears, and your impulses. Many people think power means taking control, forcing results, or demanding outcomes, but the highest form of power is the ability to restrain yourself when everything in you wants to react. It is the wisdom to stay silent when you could argue, to wait when you could rush, and to trust when you could doubt. That is the power of patience. It is controlled strength, not weakness. It shows the maturity of a soul that knows God is never late and that His timing is always perfect. In times of uncertainty, patience becomes your anchor. It guards your mind from anxiety and keeps your heart from drowning in worry. When you are patient, you refuse to let fear write your story. You do not panic at delays or complain about the unknown, because you know the one who holds the future. The peace that patience brings is not something the world can give. It is a divine peace that comes from trusting the unseen hand of God. Even when you cannot understand His ways, patience keeps you steady. It whispers to your heart that the process has purpose, that every unanswered prayer is shaping something greater behind the scenes, and that the silence of God does not mean His absence. Patience also brings peace in relationships and in daily life. It helps you see people with grace instead of judgment, to listen more than you speak, and to respond with love instead of anger. When patience fills your heart, you become slow to react and quick to understand. You realize that every person is on a different journey and that not everything requires your immediate reaction. This kind of patience creates harmony and allows peace to reign where conflict could have taken root. It is a reflection of divine love that waits, forgives, and endures without losing compassion. Patience and peace are deeply connected because one cannot exist without the other. You cannot have peace if you are impatient, and you cannot remain patient without inner peace. They strengthen each other. When you choose patience, you invite peace into your heart, and when peace fills your soul, patience becomes natural. Together they create a stability that cannot be shaken by circumstances. This is why those who live with patience walk with calm confidence, even when life does not go according to plan. They have discovered that trusting God's process brings more strength than trying to control every outcome. There will always be moments when life feels uncertain, when the path seems hidden, and when answers take longer than expected. But patience gives you the strength to wait without losing peace. It allows you to breathe in the middle of chaos, to stand firm when everything around you is moving, and to smile even when nothing seems clear. It is the art of resting in faith while walking through the unknown. When patience rules your heart, uncertainty loses its power over you. You stop chasing outcomes and start cherishing the journey, because you know that every delay, every silence, every unanswered prayer is still under the careful hand of a faithful God. Faith believes God will do it. Patience waits until He does. Faith and patience are two sides of the same coin, inseparable partners in the journey of trusting God. Faith gives you vision, but patience gives you endurance. Faith declares that the promise of God is true. Patience holds on until that promise becomes visible. Faith says, I believe, and patience says, I will wait. Many people have strong faith for a moment, but lose it because they lack the strength to wait. Yet, it is not enough to believe once. You must believe continuously while you wait for God's timing. Patience sustains what faith starts. It keeps you standing firm when circumstances contradict your prayers, when time seems long, and when nothing appears to change. Faith is like planting a seed. Patience is like watering it daily until it grows. Without patience, your faith can wither before the harvest arrives. God honors faith, but He also tests patience to see if your trust remains even when answers are delayed. Sometimes faith brings immediate miracles, but often faith invites you into a process where patience is required to shape your heart. You may believe for healing, provision, or direction, and when it doesn't happen instantly, you might think God has forgotten you. But He hasn't. His silence is not absence, it is preparation. He is not only working on what you asked for, but also on who you are becoming while you wait. Patience is what transforms faith from emotion into endurance. It turns belief into stability. Faith without patience becomes fragile, easily shaken by time and trials. But when patience joins hands with faith, you become unmovable, because your hope no longer depends on results, but on the character of God. You start trusting not only in what He can do, but in who He is. That kind of trust brings peace, even when you have not yet seen the promise fulfilled. It gives you strength to wait without frustration, to walk without fear, and to praise even in the middle of uncertainty. When you look through Scripture, you find that every person who walked by faith also walked by patience. Abraham believed God for a son, but he waited years before Isaac was born. Joseph believed in the dream God gave him, but he endured betrayal, slavery, and prison before reaching the palace. David was anointed as king, but waited through rejection and persecution before sitting on the throne. Their faith gave them vision, but patience carried them through the delay. The promise was sure, but the process was long. God uses time to build character. The longer the wait, the deeper the roots of your trust grow. Faith without patience often leads to mistakes, because impatience drives you to act in your own strength instead of waiting for divine timing. When you try to force God's promise, you step outside His plan. The result may look like success, but it lacks blessing. Patience protects you from those errors. It keeps you aligned with God's timing, so that when the answer comes, it is complete, lasting, and filled with peace. Faith may open the door, but patience ensures that you are ready to walk through it. There is a beauty in waiting that only patience can reveal. It teaches dependence, humility, and surrender. It strengthens your spiritual muscles, teaching you that real faith is not about how loudly you declare, but how quietly you trust. When faith and patience work together, you stop worrying about the when and start resting in the who. You know that if God said it, it will happen, and you can wait with confidence. The waiting season becomes less about the outcome and more about the transformation happening within you. You begin to understand that every delay is shaping your spirit, refining your motives, and preparing you for something greater than what you imagined. Faith gives you the courage to start the journey. Patience gives you the strength to finish it. Faith reaches out to the promise. Patience pulls it into reality. Together they build a life that cannot be shaken by time, disappointment, or difficulty. When your faith says yes, and your patience says not yet, you learn to walk in perfect peace, knowing that God's promise is certain and His timing flawless. The waiting season is not wasted. It is God's training ground for your destiny. In the moments when life seems still, when prayers appear unanswered, and when doors remain closed, something sacred is happening beneath the surface. God is shaping your character, deepening your faith, and preparing you for the promises He has already planned. The waiting period is not a time of emptiness, but of divine activity. Just because you cannot see progress does not mean that nothing is taking place. God does some of His greatest work in the hidden seasons when you feel forgotten or delayed. He uses waiting to strip away pride, strengthen trust, and make sure that when your blessing arrives, you have the maturity to handle it with wisdom and gratitude. Every great destiny requires preparation, and preparation takes time. The waiting season is where vision meets refinement. God may show you glimpses of your future, but before He fulfills it, He will shape your heart to sustain it. You cannot carry the weight of a great calling with an unprepared spirit. Waiting builds the spiritual muscle necessary to hold the promise without breaking under its pressure. It teaches you endurance, humility, and dependence on God's strength rather than your own. Many people want the promise, but not the process. They want success without struggle, fruit without growth, glory without molding. But every seed must spend time buried in darkness before it can rise into light. Waiting seasons are those buried times when God develops the unseen roots that will one day support your visible growth. When you learn to see waiting as training, your frustration turns into faith. Instead of asking, "Why is this taking so long?" you begin to ask, "What is God teaching me here?" The delay becomes a classroom where patience, discipline, and trust are taught. The longer the waiting, the deeper the lesson. Some prayers take time not because God is withholding them, but because He is developing you to receive them properly. If He gives you too much too soon, it could crush you instead of bless you. Just as a child cannot handle the responsibilities of adulthood without maturity, you cannot step into certain levels of purpose until your heart has been refined. The waiting season ensures that you are not just ready for the blessing, but worthy of it. In the waiting season, God teaches reliance. When doors remain closed, you learn to depend on Him instead of opportunities. When answers are delayed, you discover that His presence is your true reward. Waiting purifies your motives. It reveals whether you seek God for who He is or only for what He gives. It burns away impatience, pride, and self-will, leaving behind a humble and surrendered heart. This is why some of the most powerful people of faith have been those who waited the longest. They learned to worship in the silence, to trust in the dark, and to hope without evidence. That kind of faith is unshakable because it was forged in the fire of waiting. Even nature testifies that nothing beautiful is rushed. Trees take years to grow strong roots before they bear fruit. Gold is refined only after being tested by fire. Diamonds are formed under immense pressure deep underground. Likewise, your waiting season is forming something precious within you. It is polishing your patience, strengthening your resolve, and aligning your spirit with God's perfect will. What seems like delay is often divine timing, working all things together for your good. When the waiting finally ends, you will look back and realize that God never wasted a single moment. Every tear, every test, every unanswered prayer served a purpose. The waiting season taught you to walk by faith, not by sight. It transformed your dependence on outcomes into dependence on God Himself. You may have thought nothing was happening, but heaven was orchestrating every detail. The waiting season was never a pause in your purpose. It was preparation for it. Delays are not denials. They are divine preparations for greater blessings. When life seems to slow down and your prayers appear unanswered, it is easy to feel forgotten or overlooked. Yet in those moments of delay, God is not ignoring you. He is orchestrating something better than you imagine. His timing is never meant to disappoint, but to deliver perfection at the right moment. Every delay carries divine purpose, even when it feels like everything is standing still. Sometimes what you see as a setback is actually God setting the stage for a breakthrough. What you interpret as silence is often His preparation in progress. The delay is not there to punish you, but to position you. In the journey of faith, delay is often the classroom where God teaches trust. He delays not because He cannot act, but because He wants you to grow. If everything came instantly, you would never learn endurance, patience, or reliance on His wisdom. The delay builds your faith in ways that blessings alone never could. It purifies your desires, testing whether you truly want His will or only your way. It strips away impatience and teaches the rhythm of divine timing. When you understand that delay is part of God's design, you stop asking, "Why is this happening?" and begin to ask, "What is this preparing me for?" The focus shifts from frustration to formation. Every great promise in Scripture was preceded by a delay. Abraham waited for his son, Joseph waited in prison, Moses waited in the desert, David waited for his throne. Their waiting was not wasted, because God used the time to prepare them for what was coming. If He had fulfilled the promise too early, they would not have been ready to carry its weight. In the same way, when God delays something in your life, it is because He sees what you cannot see. He knows what is ahead and what still needs to be shaped within you. He is not only preparing the blessing for you, He is preparing you for the blessing. The delay ensures that when the door finally opens, you are strong enough, wise enough, and mature enough to walk through it and keep it open. Delays also reveal the depth of your faith. It is easy to trust God when answers come quickly, but true faith is proven in waiting. When nothing seems to change, when prayers seem unanswered, and when the silence feels heavy, that is when faith matures. In the delay, you learn to stand firm on God's word without needing immediate evidence. You discover that faith is not just believing for something, but believing in someone. The longer the delay, the deeper the relationship grows, because you learn to trust His heart, even when you cannot trace His hand. Sometimes, what feels like a delay is actually divine protection. God may be keeping you from something that looks good but is not right for you. He may be rearranging circumstances or shielding you from unseen harm. If He allowed everything to happen when you wanted it, you would step into situations that your spirit is not yet equipped to handle. The delay is His mercy in disguise, saving you from pain and positioning you for peace. There are times when the things you are praying for are being worked out behind the scenes, aligning perfectly with His plan. Heaven's timing is always more accurate than human desire. When you embrace delay as part of God's process, peace replaces impatience. You stop trying to force outcomes and begin to rest in His promise. You no longer see waiting as wasted time, but as sacred preparation. Each delay strengthens your faith, increases your gratitude, and builds your dependence on His timing. When the fulfillment finally comes, you will see why He made you wait. The delay allowed your roots to grow deeper, your faith to grow stronger, and your heart to grow humbler. What once felt like a pause was actually progress. What looked like waiting was working. The delay was never a denial. It was the hand of God arranging every detail so that when the blessing arrives, it comes with peace, purpose, and perfect timing.